guys, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to The Wandering Reader. Today I'm going to be doing my new book buzz video for April to June of 2018. So basically this is a video series where I talk about upcoming releases for the next quarter that I'm really excited about and just tell you a little bit about them basically. So I have quite a few books to talk about today, so let's jump into the first book. So we're going to dive into April first, and the book that I want to talk about first for April is Macbeth, and this is by Jo Nesbø, and this comes out on the 5th of April. This is, I believe, part of the Hogarth Shakespeare series, where a bunch of contemporary writers basically have been rewriting Shakespeare plays. So I believe Hagsy by Margaret Atwood was one, and then you had New Boy by Tracy Chevalier, and I think Vinegar Girl by Anne Tyler was another one. So this is obviously a retelling of Macbeth, and if you didn't know already, Jo Nesbø is a Norwegian crime writer, and I'm a big fan of his Harry Hole novels. And so what he's doing in this is he is reimagining Macbeth, but in sort of like a police setting. So Macbeth as a character is an inspector in the book. He's called Inspector Macbeth, and it says as part of the premise that he's an ex-drug addict with a troubled past. It says he's plagued by hallucinations and paranoia, and he starts to unravel, and he's convinced he won't get what's rightfully his unless he kills for it. So I'm really interested to see how Jo Nesbø updates the story. Updates is probably the wrong word because we know that Shakespeare's timeless, but yeah, just how he kind of plays around with the storyline and how he puts his own unique style onto it. And like I said, I really love Jo Nesbø's writing, so really looking forward to this one. Next up for April is Clean by Juno Dawson, and this is also out on the 5th, and this is her novel, and I don't know whether she's written novels before, so I'm not sure whether this is her first novel, because she's written quite a lot of non-fiction, including The Gender Games, which I have a copy of on my shelf and really need to read soon. But in this book, it focuses around a socialite called Lexi Volkov, and one day she overdoses and she has to enter this really exclusive rehab facility. And she kind of meets some people while she's there, and it's about how they get on in this rehab facility. But there's a quote from the premise, and it says, "It's a dirty business getting clean. This is a novel of addiction and redemption, love and despair." So people have been sort of raving about the premise of this, and the cover, as you can see, is absolutely incredible. And actually with the synopsis that I read on Amazon, they have quoted this as, "This will look brilliant on your shelf," which, because obviously of the gold, I think it's supposed to be like rose gold or gold, and yeah, so that's interesting way of selling it to you. Yeah, really interested in what she does with fiction. Jumping into May now, there are quite a few May releases. May tends to be, or it seems to be, one of those kind of big publication months, perhaps because summer's on its way and people are thinking about what to take on their beach holidays and things like that. So yeah, the first book that I'm really interested in May is A Court of Frost and Starlight, and this is by Sarah J Maas, and this is out on the 1st of May. And this is of course a continuation of her A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and it's a companion novel or novella. I'm not really sure about the length of it, and it's supposed to bridge the events between A Court of Wings and Ruin, which is the 3rd book in the first trilogy, and then the upcoming novels in the new part of the series. So I think it's supposed to be a novella, but I'm not 100% sure, because Tower of Dawn was supposed to be a novella, and that's probably bigger than a lot of the other books in the series, but there we go, that's a separate issue. And this is narrated by Rysand and Feyre, and yeah, I really loved the Court of Thorns and Roses series, so I will be highly anticipating picking that one up and continuing on. Next up is a book called The Smoke Thieves, and this is by Sally Green, and this is also out on the 1st of May, and I have an early copy of this on my Kindle from NetGalley, and when I saw this come up on my email, I immediately requested it because I thought the premise sounded really, really interesting. Sally Green, I believe, is a fantasy writer, and I think she wrote the Half Bad series. I've seen those around a few times, never really thought about picking them up really, but this one sounds really, really good. So this is the start of a new fantasy series from her, and this is set in a world where there's a bustling trade in an illicit supernatural substance, and 5 lives intertwine: a visionary princess, an idealistic soldier, a streetwise hunter, a charming thief, and a loyal servant. And it talks about, will they come out alive when war hits, or something kind of along those lines. So the cover for this really intrigued me as well, and yeah, I just think this is going to be a really interesting fantasy read. Next up in May we have The Particular Wisdom of Sally Redcheese, and this is by Ruth Hogan, and this is out on the 3rd of May. Ruth Hogan also wrote... I can't believe I forgot that. Ruth Hogan also wrote The Keeper of Lost Things, which I'm planning on reading this year. Dave from Wild Reads recommended it as my booktuber recommends pick from him, and I'd been eagerly wanting to read it anyway. And then I saw that she was bringing out her second novel, and it's got a very, very similar cover to the first one. And the premise sounds really, really interesting. So this says it's about a woman called Masha, and 12 years ago there was some sort of a tragic event that happened in her life, and it brought her life to a bit of a standstill. So it describes her life as having stopped. It says that she goes to a local Victorian cemetery and to her local Lido, and that's it basically. And then she meets 2 characters, one called Kitty Muriel and the other one called Sally Redcheese, who open up a new world of possibilities. And this sounds a little bit like the premise of Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, that kind of idea of a reclusive, lonely character who has lots of things going on with her past and things like that. Dave from Wild Reads raves about The Keeper of Lost Things, and he is highly anticipating this second book as well. So I'm sure I'm going to love that first book, and I can't wait to pick up the second one as well. Next up is The Surface Breaks, and this is by Louise O'Neill, and this is out on the 3rd of May. And when I first saw this announced on Twitter, I immediately added it to my list of anticipated books coming out this year. This is basically The Little Mermaid retelling, and what that drew me to it, and then the cover drew me to it as well. It's an absolutely stunning cover. And then I read this in the premise when I was researching for this video. It says reimagined through a searing feminist lens. So I think that's just going to be absolutely fabulous. I'm yet to read anything by Louise O'Neill, and I really, really want to. So I think this will be a perfect one to pick up. I've got a couple of non-fiction books coming out in May that I really kind of am interested in reading. One is called The Language of Kindness, A Nurse's Story, and this is by Christie Watson. This is also out on the 3rd of May, and Christie Watson was a nurse for 20 years, and basically this is a book about her experiences on the job. There seems to be a wave of non-fiction books coming out about people who have worked in the public sector in Britain, and I don't know, yeah, I've read kind of obviously some Adam Kay's book recently, and a couple of others. I just think people are fascinated by these particular jobs. Kind of makes me think, are they going to do a teacher one? It's hard, isn't it? Yeah, I don't know how you would put that together, but that would be the perfect one to do next. I think people would be quite shocked by some of the things that yeah, go on in the teaching profession, the sort of pressures that we're under and stuff like that. But anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, I think this is going to be fascinating from that point of view as well. And following up from that, another one that's out on the 3rd of May is Into the Fire, My Life as a London Firefighter by Edric Kennedy McFoy. And again, this is a book that is about a public service job, so being a firefighter and being a London firefighter as well. And he, I believe, was involved in the Grenfell Tower blaze, and kind of was involved in putting that out, and well, not putting it out, but kind of helping people and things. So again, I think that sounds fascinating, and I'm really looking forward to picking that one up too. The last one in May is Leah on the Offbeat, and this is by Becky Albertalli, and this is also coming out on the 3rd. And this is the sequel to Simon vs. the Homo sapiens Agenda, and I read that last year and really enjoyed it. In fact, I nominated it as a book that kids at my school should read before they leave. I just think it deals with some really important issues. And this follows Simon's BFF called Leah as she grapples with changing friendships, first love and senior year angst. And she is a bisexual character, although she hasn't come out to Simon yet. She's also a drummer as well, which I found that really interesting. And it's just about her kind of story, trying to get through senior year in high school. And obviously we're going to see some of the characters that we saw in the original book too, so really yeah, highly anticipating that one, as I'm sure a lot of other people are too. And then we move on to June, and the first one that I want to talk about for June is Sick, a Memoir, and this is by Christie Karkpour, and this is out on the 5th of June. I apologise if I know I've said that name wrong, so I apologise about that. This is described as a memoir of chronic illness, misdiagnosis, addiction and the myth of full recovery. And this follows, obviously, this is all about poor Christie's life suffering with illness and all of the things associated with that. And it talks about the fact, on the premise that she has been ill for as long as she can remember, and she was diagnosed with Lyme disease, and she's been suffering with Lyme disease, and it's about kind of her experience of being sick for a very long time. Again, it's in that sort of medical non-fiction vein that I've been really enjoying recently, and I think this one sounds like it's going to be fascinating. Then I've got another non-fiction book, and it's called Squeezed, Why Our Families Can't Afford America by Alyssa Quartz, and this is out on the 26th of June. When I originally put this on my TBR, I wasn't expecting it to be about the middle classes in America. And then as I was doing a bit more research into it for this video, I learned that it was, and it's kind of put me off it a little bit, and I'll explain why. So this is about yeah, middle class Americans and how they're struggling to kind of make ends meet. So it says, with high childcare costs, harsh employment policies, and workplaces without paid family leave or dependable working hours, we're being, you know, this idea of them being squeezed basically. And I don't know, I just kind of think that they're very much coming from a position of privilege, and I kind of don't know whether, yeah, how I'll feel about that. I'm kind of still intrigued to read it because I think it would be fascinating to kind of learn a bit more about America, modern America, and about politics and all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I do think the premise makes it sound like it's going to be a little bit privileged, and I don't know how I feel about that. So anyway, there's that one. And then the last book that I want to talk about today is The Death of Mrs. Westaway, and this is by Ruth Ware, and this is out on the 28th of June. This is the 4th book from Ruth Ware, and I own her previous 3, and I've only read The Woman in Cabin 10. I quite enjoyed that one. This one seems to be about an old house, and it seems to be sort of a tale of deception, I suppose. This woman apparently gets a letter in the post saying that her grandma, I think, has died and she's inherited this house, but the woman that receives the letter isn't the granddaughter, but she kind of thinks that maybe she'll be able to pull off pretending to be her. So she goes basically on this journey to see whether she can get the house and that sort of thing. So that sounds really intriguing. It's being described as a novel of false identity, murder mystery and a good psychological thriller. So yeah, interested in picking that one up too. So there you go guys, they were all of the books that are highly anticipated between April and June of 2018. I'd love to have a chat with you in the comments below. What are some books that you're highly anticipating that perhaps I didn't mention today? Are there any that you think I would really enjoy? Because of course there are loads of books coming out and I've only mentioned a few of those today. And are you looking forward to any of the ones that I mentioned on today's list? Thanks very much for watching and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.